School Committee to order. Will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Policy. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portions of our meeting has notified the superintendent's office of the desire to speak and is provided with these guidelines. Upon written request, comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of this meeting will be read and made part of the record during the second public input comment session. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. Our first order of business to approve our minutes for our meeting on May 21st.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes for the meeting of May 21st.
A second?
Okay, any corrections on the minutes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstention? Okay. 4 aye and 1 abstention.
What, for?
Yep. Okay, all right, next up, we'll hear from our Chelmsford High School student representatives.
A graduate.
Former Chelmsford High School.
Yes.
Alumni.
Oh, wait.
Alumnus.
Oh, alumni now.
Alumni.
Yeah, you're an alumni.
Yeah.
Oh, gee.
So this past Saturday, June 1st, was the CHS graduation ceremony for the class of 2024 at Tsongas Arena at UMass Lowell, and the seniors have officially graduated, which is really exciting. And next Tuesday, the 11th, will be the 8th grade move-up day. So the 8th graders will walk over to the high school at around 12 p.m. and get a tour of the high school, meet some freshman teachers and staff, hear from current freshmen, and will be able to meet up with their student mentors. And the mentors are chosen 10th and 11th graders who will help the incoming 8th graders transition from middle school to the high school. And I also just wanted to share that this is my last school committee meeting, so thank you all for an amazing experience. It's been fun, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So today, some of the high schoolers participated and volunteered in the second Unified Game Day at McCarthy, and the student volunteers were able to help out with the athletes and run activity stations. And today was a great day for all the athletes with different abilities across the Chelmsford schools and the students who took time out of their day to make this an amazing event for everyone. And this Friday is the start of our finals, meaning we have 2 hour and a half long class periods a day to take our 2 class finals, besides next Wednesday where there is only 1 final and a makeup period.
I would like to, on behalf of the committee, thank you both for doing a great job all year long with your reports and everything else. Lana, hopefully we see you back here
I'll
again.
be here. And the election for the new student representative will be Thursday. There's 2 kids to run off. I don't.
So you're coming back.
Yeah, I'll be back. So you guys are all super lucky.
Putting in a good word for us, Lana?
Yeah.
And Kia, thank you. And congratulations. Great speech, by the way, the other night at graduation.
Yes.
Congratulations on that. So we have a little gift, parting gift. So, for all your hard work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any good news they want to share?
I figured they were going to take the good news, so as they were saying it, those were 2 of the big items that we had. I don't know if we want to open it up for anybody else that wanted to share anything for good news?
Anyone else have anything they want to share? I do have one thing. A few weeks ago, right after our last meeting, Superintendent Lang received an award from the Mass Association of School Superintendents. He didn't tell us about it at the time. But I want to congratulate him for that. It was the President's Award, and big deal. Okay,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
All right, anybody else have anything? Okay, all right, so we're at our first public input session. I don't believe have anybody registered for the beginning part.
Correct. That's the end.
All right, so we'll move on to new business.
Great. We're going to start, and we actually have a couple of presentations before you tonight. In the first one, we're going to be highlighting Megan McGurk in our CHIPS program. So this is our Chelmsford Integrated Preschool Program. Amy Reese, our Director of Student Services, is here with Megan as well. So we'll welcome you guys to come up. And again, this is a kind of a highlight for us. Originally, we had a scheduling issue. Originally, it was going to be CHIPS and community education. The community education director is going to come to the second meeting in June and talk a little bit about community ed and some of the Summerfest and Summer Quest programs. But Megan was still able to come tonight and to talk a little bit about CHIPS. So Megan, welcome aboard, and we'd love to hear a little bit about it.
And I just want to note that one of our teachers, Mary Ellen
Oh.
Ford, is here as well.
Hi.
I know she probably didn't want me to call attention to her, but I appreciate her support. So yes, I'm Megan McGurk. I'm the coordinator of the Chelmsford Integrated Preschool Program. So our program at a glance, we have 8 classrooms, 5 inclusive preschool classrooms, 2 intensive preschool classrooms, and 1 that is an inclusive intensive classroom. We have over 220 students currently enrolled at CHIPS. Most students attend either 2, 3, or 4 half days a week, and they're a mixture of students with identified special needs and also typically developing peer models. So that's our program at a glance. We have 5 inclusive classrooms. These are classrooms that are a mix of typically developing students and students who have identified disabilities. All of our classrooms have communication and motor support embedded in the classrooms for all of our students. Our speech therapists spend time in there weekly. Occupational and physical therapists are also available to all of our students. They're half-day, 2.5-hour sessions, morning or afternoon, and we have 2, 3, or 4-day options for our inclusive classrooms. And this is where most of our students are enrolled. We have 2 intensive classrooms at the preschool level. These are substantially separate classrooms for students who require a higher level of support, primarily ABA-based instruction. For our students there, also with communication and motor support embedded in the program. Speech therapists spend a lot of time in those rooms, as do our physical and occupational therapists. Many of those students attend a half day, but there is an extended day option for our children who need more time, and that's based on IEP team decision. And then we have an inclusive intensive classroom. This is a really unique room, and it provides an opportunity for inclusion for some of our needier students with additional support for students who require it. So it's a session that is half of the day is an inclusive session that's staffed a little bit higher. We have an extra ABA-trained paraprofessional in there, and then half of the day is a substantially separate session where children can work on skills in a small group setting with direct instruction. Again, communication and motor support are embedded in the classroom. And as I said, part of the student's day is in an inclusive environment and part is in a substantially separate environment. There's a lot of different schedules in this classroom. It's a very flexible classroom, really based on individual needs and IEP team decision. So we have some children who will attend 4 days from 8:15 to 1:30, some who come in the morning 4 days and stay 1 or 2 days for some extra small group instruction, and kind of everything in between there. So it really is for our kids who don't need that substantially separate environment. We need them to be less restricted, but still need a little bit more support. And this is, I think the staff's been really good at evolving with this program as the needs of our students have evolved. So we have a lot of related services and supports at CHIPS: speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. Those are provided as determined by students' IEP teams. They're also a great resource for any student because they're available to consult to all of our teachers if, they're looking for some gross motor activities to do with kids who might be, a little bit behind in that area. We deliver our services in the classroom in the inclusive setting whenever possible, and the related service providers consult regularly with our classroom teachers to ensure that skills are carried over throughout the day, not just when they're in the classroom. And our curriculum, we have a language-rich, sensory-friendly environment. Our curriculum is developmentally appropriate. It's aligned with the district's elementary curriculum. We use Foundations and Fountas and Pinnell Classroom at an age-appropriate level. For a lot of our kids, it's exposure to those programs, so they know the language, they know the structure when they get to kindergarten, but we really individualize it based on what the kids are ready for developmentally. And we have standards-based report cards for both our 3- and 4-year-olds based on the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. And now the really fun part is pictures. So these are some pictures from our Space Week. Space Week is actually a 2-week theme. We call it Space Week. It goes across all of our classrooms. Our whole hallway is decorated. One of our teachers, Lauren Nicolosi, spearheads this, and there's really great staff participation to help her because it is a lot of work to set this up. The kids have a blast with it, as you can see. Very, very fun. And then Under the Sea is another one of our themed weeks. That's going on right now. It's our second week of Under the Sea. Again, Lauren Nicolosi spearheads this. It's based on the book Commotion Under the Ocean. All of our teachers do a lot of work helping to set this up. A lot of fun. And this just happened recently. We have Touch a Truck every year, sponsored by our PTO. They put it all together. It's a rain or shine event, and this year it was a rain event. But the kids had a blast. The teachers were awesome sports. The volunteers were awesome sports. And it's one of the highlights of our year. The kids just have so much fun. And Officer Ozzie was there too, but I didn't get a picture because he was sleeping most of the Touch a Truck day. So just a few highlights from CHIPS. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions or comments or?
I'm just going to make a comment. I'm over here, but where are you?
I'm right.
I love CHIPS, and I love the work you do. My family has been participated in CHIPS, and of all of the services I think that the town provides and we provide, yours is probably one of the most popular because it's it's just little kids. It's great. This is great.
Thank you.
Also, I miss being a parent of kids that age sometimes.
They're fun. You can come visit anytime.
All right, fair.
Welcome visitors.
Maria?
Out of your 220 students, how many are actually on IEPs?
About half. And I think our population has really expanded since I've been the coordinator. So we've been really creative with schedules because we have more kids with identified needs. So we've been really individualizing with different schedules. And I think that also allows us to serve more community children. So that's kind of been an added bonus, kind of getting creative with the sessions and offering different options. But it's about half, which is by design because an integrated program is designed to be 50%, 50% students.
That's wonderful. Is EL a part of CHIPS too?
All of our teachers are SEI endorsed. The L teachers come over and screen all of our children. And that's going to be changing how we're doing that, but it's part of it. And all of our kids are provided sheltered English immersion as they need it.
Okay. How is, and maybe this is a more general question, how does funding for CHIPS, what is the source of funding for the CHIPS program?
Yeah, so CHIPS is part, it's in our local budget, so CHIPS is funded as part of our local budget. We do take in some revenue from the role model or the general ed students that come to kind of partner in the program. That goes through one of our revolving funds, and we use that to offset some of the costs for teachers and things like that in the program. CHIPS and our special education program also receives grants from the state, so there's some grant funding involved. But the bulk of the program is local budget. It's part of the budget that you approve. We have line items for preschool teachers and things like that. When you see preschool teachers, that means the CHIPS program.
So congratulations to Chelmsford for an excellent program, I think, and to you all for running it. Just another question on, you said you follow Foundations and Fontes and Pinnell. And so how have you found that curriculum to be in the school?
I think it's been a great success. And I think my teachers are really good about using it at the level that's developmentally appropriate for their students. So it's incorporated into Circle. They're incorporating, sometimes lining up, just doing the activities. So the Foundations has been great that way. Fountas and Pinnell has been great exposure to a lot of great literature. There's, big books that are a great resource for it. So it's just kind of blended nicely into the literacy instruction that's already been there.
Okay, great. I'm going to make one final comment and tell you this. My daughter substituted at CHIPS, and she told me that she loved the classroom teachers that were in that classroom, and she thought that they were absolutely phenomenal, and just following all the things she's learning in school herself.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So
Thank
that was a
you
great
for
thing
that
to hear.
compliment. Thank you.
I had one question. I'm just curious, in regards to the intensive inclusive classroom, during the part of the day where the students who need more intensive services are doing that, do the more mainstream students join another class, or is there?
So the way it works is the inclusive part of the day is our AM session, which is 8:15 to 10:45. The peer model students leave at 10:45, and then students who have an extended day stay from 10:45 to 1:30.
Okay.
So it runs a little bit differently than our 2 half-day sessions.
It's a shorter day for those kids. Okay.
Anybody else? Sue?
I have a question, and I should know the answer, but I don't. Are all of your teachers special ed teachers?
They are. They're all dual certified in early childhood and special education.
That's good. I'll just echo what Josh said. I had 2 kids go through CHIPS myself, and really they kind of started on the right foot, with their education. One was a student with needs, one was a peer model, and the peer model is now a speech therapist herself. So she's really kind of, saw what things were like way back then. I also want to put up a plug in for the PTO. I know Sue can back to, it's a tough PTO because it's turning over so quickly, but the amount of enrichment activities and everything else that they help to fund and organize, it's really impressive. And even though Mary Ellen will probably hate me for pointing it out, Mary Ellen's kind of the cornerstone of the whole thing because she's there year after year, kind of helping guide the process along. So I thank
Yes,
parents for
I
all
like-
that they do, and also, obviously also the teachers.
I like to say that our PTO is small but mighty.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
they
good way to
are
describe
mighty.
it, yeah. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Great, we're going to transition to our second presentation tonight. We do this every June, so we're going to welcome up Nancy Antolini. Nancy is our Director of School Nutrition, and Nancy is going to kind of walk us through a year in review of the school nutrition program, some of the stats about numbers of meals served, breakfasts served. Joanne, actually, did you want to give a little, I'm kind of stealing the intro. Did you want to give a little intro? Okay. I have a tendency to do that, I'm sorry. So Nancy is going to share that with us. And at this point in time, while we assume next year meals will be free again, we just do have to wait till the budget gets approved at the state level. That hasn't happened yet, but all indications look like they want to go in that direction. But we still have to kind of safeguard just in case something were to change. But Nancy, I'd love to turn it over to you and hear a little bit about your year in food services.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. Let's go with number of the meals served thus far for 23-24 school year. Phenomenal. Our breakfast program were 157,671. Last year, for the full year, we were at 191. But at lunches this year, thus far, 483,209. Over comparison to last year, the full year, we were 480,835. So we've already beat that, so that's great, and we had a few more weeks to go. And so as you can see, our total so far this year is 640,880. Compared to last year, it's 672. Like again, that was the full year, and we still had we have about 6 weeks when we did this, 4 to 6 weeks. So we really are pleased and happy and busy. That's for sure. We're busy. It is just a reminder, if we did ever have to go back to paid lunches, we have to stay within the compliance. And right now, we still say we're $1.75 for breakfasts across the board. In the high school and the middle school are $3.25, and the elementary school is at $2.75. And that would remain the same until we have another meeting, if we ever had to look at that again. Procurement this year, we went out, we had a rebid for all of for everything this year. So our paper bid was with Mansfield Paper, dairy is with Rosev, grocery with Thurston Foods, bread with Fantini, we hope. And we had a rollover with our fresh pizza, and that's with Gill's Pizza again. So our accomplishments this year, we, as you saw, increased our meals served. We're at over 60% participation for lunch at each school. Hopefully next year our breakfast will do that, but right now we're for our lunch. We reevaluated the needs of the school district and adapted the plans to meet those needs to serve breakfast and lunch at each site. We do the elementary schools, we serve them in the classroom, except this year we started with the 3rd and 4th grades. We serve them, we have the 3rd and 4th grades come down to the cafeteria, so that's new, and actually it's working out. We just don't do it at Harrington because of the pods, so that was new. Next year, we've discussed already that at the high school, we'll have breakfast after, in between the Pride, so about 9:15, there'll be a second chance breakfast. So we'll set up some cots in the hallways. And I appreciate that Steve Murray's going to look at that with me, and he's kind of pleased about it. So we continue to introduce the new menu items with scratch cooking recipes. We implemented a new nutritional menu planning and production record software. It's terrific. Parents can see exactly what's in everything we serve, and it makes it a lot easier, and we have a dietitian on staff, so we've really come up with that. And the nurses, they can see whatever's going on. So we don't have any more of the calls or any panic most of the time. I'm not going to say it's 100%, but most of the time, everybody knows what's going on. That implemented the new meals are prepared with state-of-the-art equipment at the high school is our commissary still, and they're delivered to each school. And I'm sure you all know that, you'll see the pictures, that we opened up the McCarthy School this year, and it's beautiful, and we already have Parker, that was done a few years ago. Now we're working on the design plans, and we started renovations at the high school as of yesterday. And I don't know if anybody got a chance to see, we painted South Road, the new cafeteria. There's a, what they call a storefront, and then we painted the inside wall of the cafeteria. And I think we've got a lot of good reviews on that, who's ever seen it. We hired quite a few new employees, and we're still working very closely with Human Resources in our recruitment efforts at the regional job fairs. We already hired so far in the, going through HR and going through we've had 8 more for next year, so that's really good. We've never done that before. We continued our partnership with Valley Collaborative to have 3 to 5 individuals assist the team in the high school commissary daily. All staff received monthly sanitation training. All staff received 3 PD days in-house training. We reviewed again the National School Lunch Program, the guidelines, hands-on culinary training. We did a few classes in that this year, which was a lot of fun too, for scratch cooking. And there will be, I'm sure you might be hearing it, there are new guidelines for our breakfast programs starting next year. By the time we finish in 3 years, there'll be no salt or sugar left, unfortunately. I and our assistant attended a week-long training at Framingham State last July in collaboration with the Institute of Child Nutrition to train the trainer. I continued my leadership roles in the SNA of Mass as a media past president and worked in collaboration with the Wellness Committee for the successful Wellness Fair held in March. That was an incredible fair, and I really have to say Katie Sims and Stephanie did an unbelievable job, and along with Peggy Gump and a few others. It was incredible. And we increased catering for events within the Chelmsford school community. In fact, today we did work over at the Unified Games. So these are just some pictures I wanted to show you. That's what South Road's wall in the cafeteria looked like, top left. That's what it looked like before. As you look down, that's what it looks like now. And that's the inside wall. So when the students walk through the lines in the cafeteria, the serving line, that's what they see. And there's another picture of, fruits and vegetables and all. So this is our lead, Randy, that he's working over now at the new McCarthy kitchen, and that's our pizza oven. And we have one over at Parker, and we have one going in at the high school. They're great. Pizzas come out really quick and delicious. And now we add ingredients. Before we just cheese pizzas, but now we put all kinds of toppings. I'm sorry, and we're at the Wellness Fair. Myself, Holly Reddy, our dietitian, she's on the far left. Casey Gump, she's been an employee with us for now 3rd or 4th year. And myself, and then Laura Bishop. She's our operations director. So for the future, we're going to implement the new modernization of the high school with capital funding. We enhance the cafeterias with updated painting, storefront murals, and serving lines that we'll be putting into the elementary schools this summer. We're expanding Tasted Tuesdays. We do them right now at South Row, so we're going to introduce them to all the elementary schools next year. And it's a lot of fun. The kids, we send over a different vegetable or fruit, of course, cooked with nothing, so they really get the taste of that vegetable or fruit. You know, we don't add anything to it, and we do it on once a month on Tuesdays. And we're hoping to invite, we tried last year, the school committee and administration to lunch. And we also will continue serving breakfast and lunch at all the schools, using the high school as a commissary. We are putting in, like, the section we're putting in now really will handle a lot more for the elementary schools for the delivery. We're continuing to hire new staff constantly because to keep up, of course, with the expanded participation. We're updating the nutritional information using the software program, as I said, adopted in 2024. Professional development and team building for the school nutrition staff. And we're purchasing farm-to-school products, which you'll see a picture in a minute, and developing more scratch cooking recipes. So that is just a small delivery that we bring in, and that's all farm vegetables. We buy local farms. We go no more than 400 miles away, and they deliver. We work with the Worcester Hub. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So they do the vegetables, and they also will do our meats and quite a bit more, too. We tried a few other things we've tried fish, and we might be introducing, hopefully next year, on, once a week or something, up at the high school especially. The kids seem to want to try fish, and we bought some nice haddock and everything this year, so all that comes from the Worcester Hub. To the right, top right, that's how the new service lines work, that the students really get to choose. This is at McCarthy. We also have it being done at South Row and Parker. McCarthy's doing a terrific job. I just had to show you how pretty it looks. And so the students can actually pick their own vegetable and scoop their own vegetable. And we'll be doing that at the high school also, because we have these beautiful serving lines, and that's how, most people do it. And the glass, it just really looks pretty, colorful. And as I say, fresh is best. And there we are. We just came back from a healthy summit, the three of us. And actually, Chelmsford won an award for our wellness policy. And Katie and Peggy and Stephanie also accompanied us there. That's just another training. That's a training with some of the staff for their development. So, on my accomplishments, past president for the School Nutrition Association. This is it for me. And then I am involved this year that our large conference is in Boston this year, so I am very involved in the coordination of all that with National. And that's in July, and we will be we offered it for any staff members that would like to accompany us, because I think it's a great thing for them to see. It makes them very worthy of their profession. So about 12 want to come, so that's going to be nice. So that's all. If you have any questions for me?
Anyone have any questions? John?
Just a quick question. What's kind of the policy and how are we doing work on things? So I just actually spoke to a recent Chelmsford alum, and one of the comments I said was, hey, what if there's one thing you could fix? And she said, I'm a vegetarian. And a lot of times there's not a lot for me to eat in the high school, so I end up eating like potato chips. And it was like 5 minutes ago. But anyway, that was the one thing she said. And I've actually heard this comment from other grades too. So the thing I've heard is vegetarian, halal, and kosher food. So how are we handling that? And I think it's pretty important to have culturally sensitive food available to kids, so when they show up, they're like, well, I could eat this food, but I'm eating salad all the time. That's kind of what ends up happening.
So with the new, I'm going to be honest with you, with the new high school kitchen, we'll be able to handle a lot more of
Awesome.
options, we should say. Right now, we do offer salads, fresh salads, as you saw.
Yeah.
Everything's from the farms. We do have a grilled cheese every day, an option. We have hummus packs, so they have that.
Yep.
So there are different options. It's just that when they run out, sometimes I do have a problem with that. In the halal, we did have one student, parents did reach out to the principal, and then they didn't go any further with it, but I did look into that.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, at the summit last week, there's, I could take in some halal, like the chicken, for example, and I would just do it across the board and just
Right, you just do it
advertise
across the board.
Right, because it tastes the same, it's delicious, and I would so that actually, we're already looking at a farm for that. So we'll be working with that next year.
I just wanted to add something like in regards to that. I think like having like a salad bar would be like a great idea because I know right now we have salad bar that has like celiac disease and there's like bread at the bottom, so she can't even get that. So I think that would be like a great idea in the future. Just wanted to say that.
So that's great to hear, because actually salad bars, so we won't have an actual salad bar. There'll be, well, there's so much that's going on in the high school. The kitchen is going to be like, I think we'll have everybody want to come and visit us. But, you know, there'll be certain days there'll be options, but everything will be to just make your own. So the only thing that we'll be actually serving you is you'll choose like hot lunch, and this is your hot lunch, and other than that, you're going to walk down that line and add whatever you want. We have tried, like we had Indian culture, we've done, you know, Asian culture foods. We're trying. So now that we have more, it seems like we have more people wanting to come back to work too. So which is great. So we hopefully we looked at it last year. We try to do like a once a month cultural food, but.
If you need anything from us, let us know, because I'm a big supporter of it. I think it'd be good. And I think with the expansion, the capital expansion, I think it's going to help you to do a lot more too. I think sometimes you're just limited by the equipment you have. So, no, I'm really looking forward to seeing all the changes. My daughter's actually going to high school next year, so
Oh, really?
I'll get all kinds of real-time reporting on it, if she's talking to me that day. But generally speaking,
No.
So Nancy, in terms of the breakfast program, now I'm also a member of the Wellness Committee, and Nancy is an incredible contributor to that committee. You did actually all the lunches for the folks who were displaying, right, at this whole fair. So that was great, and we appreciate that tremendously.
Thank you.
You had mentioned something about serving the breakfast, and it looks like you are starting to do different things, like offering a second breakfast at the high school, second chance, and elementary, the fourth graders in the CAF. I think it's probably hard for kids to have it in the classroom when not everybody's having it in the classroom, or only making the, you know, you yourself are choosing it, but other people are not, and so on. So that seems to be your way of trying harder to get everybody to access the breakfast as much as possible?
Right. We're going to actually, Holly, myself, and Laura, we've been speaking about that because we look at the numbers and we're looking at the concern and everything. And breakfast is that number one meal that they, actually, Desi always pushes us on that. We're thinking of maybe if we have enough employees, because there's so many different hallways, and of course, they have to get to class fast, and we have to account for those breakfasts, even though everything's free, breakfast and lunch, even though everything's free, we still have to account to it to a student, meaning that that student picks it up, I still have to ring in that student's number, because there's a different way that we're reimbursed for them, as you know how that all works. So we're hoping next year, if we have enough, we'll go into the hallways. This way, the child doesn't have to just go into the, you know what I'm saying? They'll just go up in the hallway, one of the hallways on the, at each school, and pick up their breakfast. And I think then they won't be so targeted and feel like, you know, why am I getting breakfast? Why isn't someone else? Right now at the middle school at McCarthy, we only serve in hallways. They walk through the hallways, they grab the breakfast, and, you know, we're going to talk to them about if there's a break in between too. Because breakfast after the bell. So because they come in so fast.
Yeah.
You don't have a chance to grab the breakfast.
I would think so.
We're going to go a little bit on the more healthier side since we're being forced into that. We're going to be ahead of the game for that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so
Yeah, but we have won awards. You do some very, very good work, so
Thank you.
we appreciate that. And you've mentioned a couple of times the workers. So I'm noticing here, is the shortage in your field, and what's happening? You're getting some, you said you have some ahead for next year already.
Oh, we started hiring already for next year. We've had, I think we're maybe at 10 already that have come in and applied. And we have a couple of new leads too. So I'll be honest with you, we have a very diverse group. I guess that's best to say too. We have a very diverse group coming in. So English is the second language for some, but everything's been working out terrific. And we still are working like with Valley Collaborative. So they help with the breakfast program. So we have a pretty good staff now. Hopefully it will continue because
Wonderful.
we hope to grow more next year.
Yep. Thank you, and thanks for all the work
Thank
on
you.
the Wellness Committee.
Thank you.
two things. First is just a comment. My kids have been at South Row, have really enjoyed and benefited from the Try It Tuesdays. So I'm excited to hear that kids at the other elementary schools will have the chance to experience that, because I think it's been a wonderful way to start a conversation about food being something that's an adventure rather than something you just kind of stick to what you know and the sweet things that the kids are all gravitating toward. The question I have is about the breakfast. I noticed, as you mentioned, that there's a drop as compared to last year, and I'm curious if that's something that you attribute to the change in the fact that parents now need to sign up in advance for their kids to receive breakfast, because that, I know that has resulted in my family not doing breakfast this year, even on days when we're rushed and the kids have to grab something out the door because, I knew I didn't register the day before.
Yes. I am going to say yes, because I think it is difficult for parents, but we have cut down on the waste. That's what we were trying to do, because we were serving every student. So, you're putting out all those breakfasts, then you try to cut back. So I think that if we have it in the hallways, we don't have to have so much that the parents will have to sign up for it. It'll be in the hallways, we'll prepare, and it'll be a little trial and error. We don't have enough of this, we don't have enough of that. I think my selection will, won't vary as much either, and it won't be so much sugar. So it's just watching the numbers constantly, and hopefully no child's going to cry. But I don't think it'll be a lot easier for parents that, they won't have to sign up.
Yeah, I think that will be welcomed. Both the fact that parents may not need to sign up in advance, but also actually the healthier options at breakfast. I know that will be a push and pull with the kids, but if I hear anything about meals that is critical, and there's a lot of positive about meals in Chelmsford schools, the critique I hear is the very sweet nature of a lot of the breakfast options. So I actually think there will be some excitement about a move towards some healthier breakfast options.
We'll try our best on that.
All right, anybody else? Susan, you good? Okay. I just have two quick questions. One is, I noticed on the memo that we're not being asked to cover any outstanding student accounts, because we don't, are we still carrying over those accounts from before COVID? I mean, we're talking 5-6 years ago. Do we still carry those over, and is there a statute of limitations?
I could give you a list, and, it's there.
Right. So each year, prior to whenever we went to, at no cost to the families, the committee voted to cover the cost of the uncollectibles. However, we never wiped it to zero, because we don't have a policy to do that. So we still have it.
Okay.
So the only way to really get rid of that is for the committee to vote to say, all this, wipe it away, and, to never,
Right.
no efforts to ever be collected ever again.
Okay, because, it's been, 4 or 5 years at least since, right, something like that?
COVID.
Yeah, and I don't know what the state's intentions are, if they're going to continue to fund school lunches and breakfasts in the future. I mean, at some point, do we just finally say, okay?
Yeah, I'd have to think about it a little further. We're not actively trying to collect, the funding at this point. I think in years past, if we had to fund and collect fees each year, and at the end of the year, we came before you and you gave us a sum to basically clear the account, that would be almost an incentive for parents to then not pay if they know it's going to get wiped at the end of the year. So I think it's not hurting anyone right now to just kind of keep it on the books, and we're not actively collecting. Let's give it another cycle for another year or two and see if the state continues to pay. If they do continue to pay, it's no harm, no foul. It's not hurting anyone. But if we ever had to go back to a pay situation, I think that could then make your uncollectibles jump if people didn't think that there was really a responsibility to pay.
All right. My other question, what do you think timeline on the high school kitchen? I mean, I know McCarthy stretched out a lot longer than we intended. How's it looking in terms of
They're
getting?
meeting today, and they're staying, Brian Curley I told them, you have to stay on target, and they're doing their best to do it.
Appliances and everything else were on schedule today?
Everything,
I know that's where we got backed up a little.
They started, I'll be honest with you, they started yesterday, and you walk in today, and you can't believe how much is already, all the lights are down, everything. So all the equipment's been moved out, it's a clear,
And what's the slated or projected end date?
August 26th.
Okay, all right, for the next school year, all right?
We, obviously, this is going to be a very tight job to try to get accomplished. When the weather kind of cooperated with us and we didn't really have a lot of snow days, we looked at the senior schedule at the high school. Obviously, we knew we lost seniors a week ago. We also kind of get into final mode, so it's half days, they're not cooking in the kitchen. We said to Nancy, is there something we can do to, produce meals outside of the kitchen that last week of school to give the contractors an extra jump? So we were able to do that. And so this past Monday, over the weekend, Brian and the facilities group went in and removed everything that was salvageable from the old kitchen that we're keeping. And then we turned it over basically to the group on Monday for them to start their work. So they're actually picking up an extra couple of weeks. We're pushing hard to get done by the end of August because not only do we have the biggest school that we serve, being the high school for breakfast and lunch, but that is our commissary. We're producing all of the meals for the elementary school. So we really can't afford to have this be a project like McCarthy kind of leaking into the fall. We're going to monitor it closely. We're going to push for that completion. You never know when you get into a construction project what happens, something behind a wall, things like that. The biggest issue we ended up actually getting into at McCarthy that was part of the delay was obviously some of the equipment was back ordered. We also had some unintended asbestos that we had to deal with as we went along the way. We knew there was a little bit of removal involved in the high school. So again, giving them an extra couple of weeks to get in and even just kind of set up their tenting and things like that has been helpful. So we're pushing for the end of August. Each month we can give you an update with regard to like where we're at. But this isn't one I want to see get too deep into the fall. It would be very difficult for us to have to then shift to the two middle school kitchens to not only produce for the kitchens, but to produce for the elementary schools and the high school. So that's not something honestly I want to have to deal with. So we're going to be pushing pretty hard.
Good, good, all right. Hey, anybody else, have anything else? All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Nancy.
Nice job as always.
Thank you.
Have a good summer.
Our third presentation tonight. Have a great summer, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you in the fall.
Yeah.
Have a good summer.
Bye.
She said she'll miss us? Oh, that's nice. So third, we have Tess from District Management Group is with us. We've been actually talking, I know this is kind of a hot topic, we've been talking about for a little bit. Susan's got her pen out and ready to take some notes.
I've got a pen to take.
You got a note too. But no, so DM Group is our partner who originally helped us put our strategic plan together 3 years ago. And then we contracted with them to do a number of different initiatives. But this past fall, one of the initiatives we identified under the equity group of the strategic planning group was around the role of paraeducators in our district and how to better and best leverage their time and efforts and energy to really be getting at increased and better student outcomes. So Tess is here to actually just give a little overview of the work that we did this year, a little update. This will also be touch base. I know, Maria, you had asked, like, when we do our next strategic plan update. So we are on a 6-month cycle. So in July, we'll be reporting on the strategic plan. So this was an element of that. But this is kind of just dedicated strictly to the paraprofessional working group as an update for you guys tonight. So without further ado, turn it over to Tess.
Great, thank you. Good evening, all. Excited, Jay kind of stole my thunder at the beginning, but I will ground us in the strategic plan as we do. But tonight, just want to go through, yes, what were the goals of this work? How did it start in the first place? Give you a progress update and then talk about where we're going next year to actually roll this out. So grounded in the strategic plan, as Jay said, just reminding us of the equity priority of the district, which essentially says making sure each and every kid has what they need to be successful. And part of that is ensuring students with IEPs or disabilities are scoring proficiently and that achievement gap is minimized. And as you may remember now, 3 years ago, I think it was, when we first built the strategic plan, it was seen that the achievement gap between students with and without disabilities in Chelmsford was larger than the state, even though students with disabilities here are actually outperforming students with disabilities at the state, striving for better. So that was the genesis here, which led us into the Special Education Opportunity Review. And basically what this says, there's a lot here. You can, we have whole articles about it, but change takes time. And so just want to take you on a little journey. We created a sense of urgency around ensuring students with disabilities had the services and supports that they needed when we first built the strategic plan, the district. Once we discovered that area of need, we built a guiding coalition through the special ed review that the para work came out of. And this year, we enlisted a volunteer army to support the para work, started to identify and remove any barriers so that this role can be refined and rolled out in the fall. So then you'll go through 6, 7, and 8 next year, generating some wins, sustaining acceleration, and really instituting this change in the role and consistency in order to serve students. So essentially, project goals, utilizing that change management framework. We talk about redefining the role of the paraprofessional. Really, it was refining the role to ensure consistency. That, you won't see a ton of new things added, some things removed, but really just making sure that across every classroom at all schools, paras understand what they are expected to do and others understand as well. So we started this work back in October to just understand really deeply what is the current role compared to best practice, outline those refined responsibilities, and then spent a lot of time talking about communication, professional development, in order for this to be implemented in the fall. We created a working group, which you can see here, so all the way from superintendent, district leaders, school leaders, general education teachers, special education teachers, and a para-educator from every level. And this was really important in order to get the perspectives not only of paraeducators, but those they work with on a daily basis. We actually worked in this room around this same table, oftentimes with chart paper and everything else. I wish I had taken a picture. But it really was incredible just to see every part of the district role talking, having really honest conversation with one another about responsibilities. And I think the district is going to be set up so well in the fall because any potential concern or barrier, I think, has already been discussed. Probably a couple will come up, but we just really had this cross-functional group. Yep, great. So we'll get into our update. As I mentioned, we met in this room 6 times throughout the course of this work to conduct a variety of activities really grounded first in best practices, defining the role, that communication, PD, and progress monitoring. And again, I think just being able, people could sit in a room and say, okay, let's, in one day, write out a bunch of responsibilities. But this really allowed the group to go through thoughtfully, have think time throughout meetings, and bring up anything that was on their mind, address those barriers proactively. So this is the work that the committee did. And we really started by rallying around a theory of action, or essentially, what is the fundamental belief around paraeducator success? So talked about, okay, if roles are clearly outlined, there's specific training, and paraeducators are directed by a licensed teacher or specialist, then they can be a highly effective member of the team. And I know everyone who was in this room certainly believed that, and so this was our guiding principle as we examined the role. And there were 3 areas of best practices that I'll talk through at a high level. As I know many of you were in the classroom, paraeducators do a lot. And so it was really helpful for us to examine the responsibilities in these 3 buckets and identify what fits in here, what doesn't, but a way to organize all of the responsibilities into these key areas of support. And so how we actually went about defining those responsibilities. We outlined all the current ones from all the levels, all types across this room. We bucketed those into different types of responsibilities, aligned on those current responsibilities, and ensured they were aligned to best practice and research. And that was then part of the proposal for the new responsibilities that, again, were iterated on probably throughout the 6 months. And so I just want to give you an example. We have the whole list of responsibilities that will be rolled out in the fall to paraeducators, every other staff member in the district who they work with. But just one example, and we heard about this a lot when we spoke to folks around the role of a paraeducator in instruction. So paraeducators will not be teaching new skills to students, not modifying tests, classwork, anything independently, teaching content, even if a student was absent the day before, et cetera, which we did hear sometimes reports happening across schools. What they will be expected to do is, yes, reinforce content that has been introduced by the teacher, support any teacher-developed plans for modifications, and assist just with inclusion of all students in the classroom. So this is just, it's very nuanced here, making sure that it's clear, yes, you are going to support in the classroom with instruction. This is what it will look like. This is what it will not. And so once we had all of those defined, we mapped out communication plans for all of these key roles. We know that if it's not communicated well, it's very unlikely to be consistent. So for each of these roles, we outline just what is the goal, message, mode, timeline of communication. So those plans will go into effect in the fall. We also outlined with the team just what professional development would be needed. And so you can see the 3 topics there around one, just the best practices, supporting diverse student needs, and focused on social emotional learning. One thing that I want to highlight here that really came out in conversation is around adult collaboration. So do general education teachers, special education teachers, paraeducators know how to collaborate with one another in the best way possible? When we first started talking to folks and we asked, what is the role of a paraeducator? We sometimes heard very different things. And so that's a key piece of the development we've talked about, just making sure folks understand the types and ways they should be working together. So with that, that is where we are this year. As you move into the fall, that will be rolled out. We're meeting with the district leadership team and school leaders on June 18th to go over all of this work, so they're prepared to support their staff. And then as we move into the year, we'll make sure to measure success along the way to make sure we don't let a whole year go by and realize that it was ineffective. So there's just a couple examples here of measures of success that the team and district leaders will think about, just knowing, okay, we just spent a whole year defining this role. How do we know that we were successful? So looking at paraeducator efficacy, how well are they performing those responsibilities, looking potentially at retention, staff satisfaction, family feedback. Now, you all already do surveys. Any question we may add will be done through existing tools, not something additional, but just to know that if there are any challenge areas, they can be addressed quickly. So with that, I already told you, we'll be here June 18th, meeting with DLT, and then everything will be rolled out in the fall. And kind of just to wrap up again, I think the group that has worked on this really, volunteered their time to spend on this work, which is going to pay dividends to just all of the paraeducators you have in the district and the impact they'll have with students. So with that, any questions?
Thank you so much for the presentation, and I've been looking forward to hearing from you all about this. I'm curious about a couple of specific things. So in the synthesized responsibilities of paraeducators, the buckets.
Yep.
One of the buckets is school and classroom duties, which I had to read the details below it to fully understand what that meant, because that could be a lot of things. Included internal subbing as one of the school and classroom duties. To me, that feels a little different than the responsibilities or than what's laid out in the theory of action. because the theory of action, you know, it doesn't either mention that or happening or not happening, but it doesn't seem explicitly to be part of supporting students' social, emotional, academic, and career success in the way that the do's and don'ts of the role laid out. Inherently being a sub sometimes means introducing new content as an educator, teaching new strategies, and needing to accommodate kids. We also heard at a school committee meeting a couple of months ago from some guests who spoke about concerns about paraeducators being pulled to be subs at the schools. I'm wondering if there was any discussion in the group about something that feels to me to be missing from the theory of action, which is a context in which there are enabling conditions so that this can happen. So if the district is short on subs, is that going to disrupt this entire theory of action? And if paraeducators are, for logistical reasons or for carefully considered reasons, going to be used as subs, how is that going to be laid out to ensure that they are still adhering to this role that the group has worked so hard to build?
Great. We talked a lot about subbing, and Jay and Amy, I'll let you, at a high level, what we did with the subbing is we heard that often the same paraeducators were being pulled to sub when a teacher was out. And so, of course, then the paraeducator who's in charge of supporting students, those students aren't, getting those supports as often. We also know that in the reality currently across the country with sub shortages, that people are going to get pulled to sub sometimes. So the team actually outlined some key guidelines around how often a paraeducator should or should not be pulled to sub so that it was more on a rotational basis and you weren't relying on those same people. Amy, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, no, I think that covered it. I think there was a lot of conversation about that, and some of that concerns are how frequently it was occurring.
You have to speak in the mic if you're going to talk.
I was just going to say, there was a lot of discussion around the amount of time in subbing and the concern around the fact that if it was happening too frequently, certain students may not be receiving their support. We had discussions around the time that sometimes if a sub does come in and then the para is working in the classroom, the paraprofessional sometimes knows that routine of the classroom, knows, structures and stuff in the classroom. And sometimes it's on paper more efficient to kind of utilize, reverse the roles. So there is still students getting their services and they're working together as a team in there. So we talked about that as well. From that. But we really spent a lot of time putting parameters around that. It's a really good question.
Okay. Yeah, there was just briefly, there was a concerted effort to say, like in some of those things for practical purposes, we're never going to eliminate something like that happening. There are teachers that have to jump in, there are administrators that have to jump in, just given what could be happening any particular day. But we really kind of focused on minimizing that as opposed to just having that be the go-to type thing, like when it had to happen for a practical purpose. Again, just kind of making sure it was kind of rotated. It wasn't just falling on the same person all the time, things along those lines. So a lot of the language will be around kind of minimizing. And when you do need to do something, being very kind of deliberate in kind of why something is happening and checking it also, so you don't go too long without kind of going back and looking at your data and saying, well, did we actually minimize? Or did we, have Jay do something 3 times and it could have been spread out over other people, things along those lines.
Yeah, I guess, so I totally agree that things are going to come up and we aren't always going to have enough subs and all of those things are going to happen. So my main concern was that there was a written and disseminated plan for that, and what you're talking about and what you were speaking about, the rotation to make sure that, no kid is constantly being deprived of the paraprofessional that's supposed to be supporting them, or, there's a whole nother side of it which has to do with the paraeducators themselves working outside of whatever they are supposed to be doing. So I guess my concern is just making sure that there was clear communication of what this plan is so that it can actually be consistently enacted if it is what was mutually agreed upon.
Yeah, and I think that's when we meet with DLT on June 18th, ensuring that school leaders, of course, who are going to usually the ones making sub-assignments, they'll have that outlined. We got to the level of detail with the group that it's school leaders who would make the sub-assignments, but a secretary may communicate that to a para-educator, and that's okay, but just even how it would work on a daily basis if that were to happen.
Around that same line of thought, one of the things I've heard commented on by paras themselves has been that when they go into the substitute role, I believe it's a different amount of pay. It's a different pay scale. And administratively, it's not easy to track when somebody is leaving one role and going into another role. It seems to me, though, that for accountability purposes and deciding whether or not a student is having sufficient para time, because that's important too, would be to see how often that pay changes and when it changes, and really truly accounting for that, so that, the paraprofessional is being paid at the rate they should be when they're subbing, and at the same time seeing how much time is being spent that way for each individual.
Yeah, I assume that's probably
Yeah,
data just collected at the school level.
Yeah,
that-
we have, that's not hard to collect. We have the data.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So that might be a way to make sure that your goal.
That's a good
is
measure
met.
of success, that rotational, that could definitely be,
Need
so
to-
thank you.
To make
yes.
sure.
Susan, you had some things? I saw you writing down and.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled to hear this work and how thorough you really were with all these discussions, because some of this was really tough. And I know that different paraeducators certainly have very different viewpoints and opinions about what they should or shouldn't be doing. So I think being able to have these discussions has been excellent. There's also the circle you have with the orange and the green. I know you can see it, but it's not all there, about what paraeducators will not do and then what they'll be expected to do. I think that's great because it's so clear. But what I really want to see happening now is you talk about change takes time, and it does. Some of this is going to be a big change, but not just for the paraeducators, for the general ed teachers and the special ed teachers. So the part about paraeducators will not modify tests, classwork, and homework independently. For some of these, in some of these schools and positions, that's a really big change. And if the paraeducators who've been doing it are no longer going to do it, it has to be really clear about who will do it then. So I think the part where you have the collaboration structures as part of the continuing work is going to be so important. So that's like the next step that I'm eager to hear about, because if the paraeducators aren't doing it, and as they're not the content trained people, so it makes sense that they're not doing it, it can't all just fall back on the general ed teacher to just do it instead. So I'm really looking forward to those continuing conversations. But I think that the work you've accomplished in a year is excellent.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for all the support, Susan. I know you've been, you've had some ear being part of the strategic plan work, but I think to your point, yes, it's, obviously this may be a change for paraeducators, but it's going to be a change for everyone in the building. And I think that's why it was important to have that representation on the committee, because the same, we had that same conversation. If you're not doing something, someone needs to do it. So I think just that, yes, having everyone hear this information at the beginning of the year at the same time will help those conversations start too.
And that circle, I don't know, you will see the big one with the orange and the green. It's so clear. I like that, but that's going to be a big piece, I think, as you're communicating this. There's a visual right here that's very clear. It's going to be helpful.
I have one more question if I can. The other thing that's not clear to me is, is a para reporting directly to the teacher? How does that work?
Nope. The para will be reporting directly to the principal or assistant principal, school leader. Yep. We talked about, we had a lot of conversation about words like manage, directed, supervises, because they all mean different things.
Yes.
So officially, they will report to the school leader, but they will work with, do you want to talk about how you can,
Yeah, we talked a lot about that, and we came up with some words around that where they may be directed and managed a little bit within the day, by the gen ed teacher, the special education teacher, maybe a related service provider, speech, OT, et cetera. And yet, the direct supervisor who they report to is the building admin.
Directed, so like, okay, you're providing this activity, you're doing this work, teacher, but no, any HR or managerial things, that's the school leader.
Okay.
Just two quick points I wanted to make. I do think it was very valuable that, like to Susan's point, it wasn't just paraeducators on this group, but like we had representation from general ed and special ed, because everyone really kind of, when that question came up, well, who's going to do this then? So it was a great group to kind of bounce off of. The conversations were excellent. I don't think anyone really kind of held back on anything over the course of the year. And it was just a very collegial group to work things through. And Tess also, you may have mentioned, but like the group actually agreed to stay on next year and even meet a few times over the course of the year to just kind of help us with the progress monitoring piece as we're doing the implementation to see if we're on track, because that was the group that was so invested in the conversations all year. So I thought that was also telling as well, that they really are invested in this and want to see it move forward, that group is going to remain and agrees to come back together next year to see this through. So that was significant. I don't know if you
We had
mentioned that.
perfect attendance and everyone was always on time, which honestly was incredible I was blown away. So yes, that is a dedication or a testament to their work.
When you said kind of brought up one of my questions, so who is going to be evaluating whether we're doing what we say we want? Like, so one of the things, paraeducated efficiency, and this is how well are paraeducated performing really? Who is making those evaluations? How are we evaluating that?
Yep. That will be, you can go.
No, go ahead.
That will be school leaders are the ones who will be, gathering any data on that, getting feedback. Then DM group will help, analyze data, identify points that need to be of focus, et cetera. But we'll talk with school leaders on June 18th, just more specifically what that will look like.
Yeah, I was just saying, we're going to, almost like we did with the strategic plan, we're now going to have this initiative that we need to roll out. So there's the whole kind of PR strategy at all different levels. There's the professional development that's going to have to take place, not only for the paraeducators, but for the general ed and special ed teachers and all the different related providers, because this is change, this is different. So everyone needs to be on board with that. And then we're going to have to come up with our metrics. We're going to begin that work on the 18th of kind of mapping out over the course of next school year, how are we going to measure the success and have different benchmarks where we're going to come back. And we may need to adjust something may have gone too quick and, it was just not an aggressive enough target. We may also realize something was just too aggressive in year one and we need to spread it out over 2 years. But we'll have those conversations, and then when we report out under the strategic plan, you'll have those kind of check-ins and check marks.
Okay, great. All right, any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for the
Thank you. Good to
presentation.
see you all.
Yeah, Tess, thank you very much for coming. Amy as well. All right, transitioning to item 4 this evening. This is a topic that we have kind of talked about and kicked around for the last year or so. And I'm not going to say too much so that Linda can just kind of, well, Linda, you get to do the presentation. But as you know, we switched to start using a platform called Panorama to look at some of our data. So what we've been kind of struggling with a little bit is how to actually show the data that we see, because it's confidential student data and things like that. We just can't project it up at a meeting. But we wanted to show you some of the analytics and some of the different things that we look at daily at the district level, school level, teacher level, things like that. So Linda was able to work with the company to basically get access to one of their test sites. So this is similar to what we have, but it's not our data, so that we can show it to you. And Linda's going to walk you through a little bit of some of the highlights of some of the things that we have set up with Panorama and how we used it in Chelmsford.
So I'll probably reiterate a lot of times that this is not our data, these are not our students, just in case somebody does sign on a little bit later to the meeting, because that would be a little unnerving, I'm sure, to most parents. So yes, this is the demonstration site from Panorama. This is what they actually use when they're, instructing people how to use the program. So honestly, these dashboards have been a multiple year process. If you talk to anybody sitting at this table, I've been talking about dashboards for a long time, because typically what happens is that you have data, but it's in so many different spots that, you have something maybe in the student management system, someone has a spreadsheet, somebody scribbled some data on a piece of paper, you're trying to get this data together to make an informed decision, and it just sometimes just doesn't really show what's happening for students. So dashboards was something that I really wanted, and at the same time, I know that the district really wanted to have surveys to be sent out to families. So when I was talking to Shannon Bischoff, she really wanted Panorama for the surveys, because that's what they've been known for so many years. And they just happened to start putting together this student success platform at the same time. So I was like, aha, let's take a look at it. And quite honestly, it fit perfectly with the ESSER funding that we had. So since we had it and it was going to be part of that, why not try it? So this is our second year with that information. So I'm just going to just give you a few highlights of some of the things that are on here, again, with fake data, not Chelmsford Public Schools data. So as a district person, when I open up the dashboard, this is what my dashboard looks like for the district. When a school principal opens it up, they see their school, and when a teacher opens it up, they only see their students. So it has that multi-layer piece. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at that. So some of the things on this dashboard, the front one, this is just the opening, like, welcome. We can get a kind of an idea of like, okay, what's happening with the academics? Are kids coming to school? Are we in the green? So it's a green, yellow, red system, right, to keep people alert. And then how are the behaviors going? And then how are we doing with SEL for students? Because in the surveys, we do surveys for families, we do surveys for teachers, we have surveys for students. The student information comes into this side of the platform, which is awesome, right? So you can get a good view. On this page, there's a lot going on here. However, two things that I really, really like on this page is, an attendance report. So this is going to look a little familiar to you. I'm going to use their Lincoln Middle School because it's a little bit more indicative of what we have. I had given you a copy of what our attendance looked like at the district level. Remember, I called this kind of like the EKG of what was happening. So you can get an idea of what the past week has looked like for your school, what the past month, 3 months, so on and so forth. And then for us, underneath, and it's not here on Panorama because they didn't populate it, it would tell you who the students are that are starting to show too much attendance, missing school. So they'll make them red. They'll tell you how many days, what's going on, so that you can go right away and say, these are the kids that we need to kind of capture at this point. So that's a really nice feature of the program that a lot of even the principals enjoy. The other one, my most favorite one, is birthdays. So why not have birthdays? And the kids have a cute little hat on their head, and then they tell you who's coming next. So those, of course, are my two favorite features. But beyond that, there's multiple pieces that I can just jump to right away. Since we have a focus on math, I could look and say how many kids are below the benchmark in math. One of the things I wanted to tell you about the academic piece, because it does get a little confusing, is that when it's pulling academics, it's pulling a student's lowest grade or lowest standard if we're looking at standards-based report cards. So for example, I'm a student, maybe I have A's and B's in all my classes except for math. Maybe I have a D or an F. It's pulling the D and the F. Not that I'm failing everything. That's why you have to kind of dig into it a little bit deeper. But it will give you an idea of like how many kids are really not doing well in courses. It doesn't mean the student's failing completely across the board, but you want to say what's going on for that student. So when you see 48%, you see yellow, you're kind of probably like, that's terrible. Why would that be in red? It's because it's only pulling how many students are in that lower part. So it doesn't mean they're all failing. We don't have, like in this Panorama Academy, there's not 52 students that are failing school. So to kind of keep that in mind. And then obviously as a district overview, we get to see all the schools. So we can jump to a school immediately and say, okay, what's happening? Like I see red here, so we take a look at what's happening with the academics, or yellow if I want to jump on behavior. Again, I'm going to use this Lincoln Middle School only because it looks a little bit more like Chelmsford. But what's really nice is on this side, and again, these are not what not the same words that we use to describe our students. It's pulling right from our student information system. So if I want to see how students are doing through race or ethnicity, if I want to look at special ed, I can jump right to that and it will give me more information about that. So this is all students. So the 9 schools in this fake school district, the 4,700 students or so. If I want to see how many of them are in a placement and how those students are doing, I can jump right to it. So again, don't be aligned by the red, because these are not our students. Or if I want to just look at how our L students are doing, so, because these are some of our focuses, we can take a look at how our L students are doing, and they break this one down by their levels. We just keep them as one one group. So that's kind of the nice way to look at it. If we want to look at a grade level, we have all of our features on the side that are coming from our SIS. This takes a lot more work to do if you're trying to pull it from our student information system, which is Aspen, sometimes called X2, it's called Aspen now. This takes a lot more work, but this allows us to just jump to it, and you can put multiple features. So that's one of the cool things about it. So back to our Lincoln School. I want to get back there. Hold on, let me just go back to my home and pull them in. So if I'm the principal, I might say, okay, I'm opening it up. I want to see what's happening in our schools. I can see what's happening in grade, apparently, but there's no academics in grade 6 in this school, but that's fine. But grade 7 and 8, I can get a good idea of what's happening. And if I want to see how, again, with those different demographics on the side that are coming from our system, I can pull that. If I want to go into a specific grade level, just going to give it a minute. It will give me an idea of the 975 students I have in the school. There's 355 eighth graders in the school, and I can look at each of the students individually. I can search for a student up here if I need to just go directly to that student. If I want to look at just ELA for these kids, I can click the ELA button and see how they're doing, or the mathematics button and see what they're doing and get how their coursework is lining up with their state assessments, lining up with our internal benchmarks, which is, a pretty cool feature. And then I can look at all the different students that we might have in here. The flag on the side is just showing if they have a intervention plan in place academically or behaviorally, right? Because if we see low attendance, we might want to be doing something for that student. So there's progress monitoring that's happening for those students. Let me pull a student up that doesn't have as many of these. So I wrote them down because I've been looking at all these students that are really not our students here, but that's fine. And I probably could have used the feature that I just told you about, but nothing like scrolling makes my day better. So let's see. All right, let's take a look at Ronald. Oh, no, he's not a good example. He doesn't have testing stuff. Hold on. Let me go back to my friends here. Let me refresh just to get them in there. There we go. All right. So, one student. Let's take a look at Tanya. What this does for me is and this is actually very helpful, especially if we're doing a student study team, it gives you the student's name, all their information, right? What their, student ID information is. If they're on a plan and they're getting progress monitoring, we'll have that. It brings up all of their grades. You can even take a look at how they've been doing with their grades. So in Chelmsford, for example, they're in Panorama Academy, they just give them a grade for each term. We put in grades every 2 weeks for our grade 5 through 12 students. So we start to, in this area, start to see multiple grades. So I might see like a D here, but then the student went up to the C, and then by the end of the term, they had a B. Or they might be going down, right? So they might end up with a D at the end of the term. We can see all the different assignments as they go in. So you can expand down to see what's happening actually in this art class or in their language arts class. So we have way more data than what they're showing here. And then what's nice is it then pulls up all of the students' assessments, so you have them right in front of you. And again, fake scores that are here because they work with multiple states. We don't have these type of numbers for our MCAS, but this is just what they're doing with their states. And then you can look at how they did for their math assessments compared to their internal benchmarks. So we have additional benchmarks in here, like our DIBELS for our younger kids. We have FMP scores in here. So there's a lot of different data points. And then their attendance. So you can get a good idea of like, is there an attendance issue? Is this why they're not doing well in school? Or wow, they come to school all the time and they're still not doing well in school. And then you can do it by class and then also by their actual, by the month. And then underneath, we have a whole behavior piece. So when we're putting conduct into our student management system, it will pull up the conduct for the students and it will, you can tell blah, 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 fake notes in here. But this is where you can put the incident notes in here. You can get what we actually put in the date, the time, because we want to see, are we having a problem at 9 o'clock in the morning? Are we having a problem at a location, like lunch? Is it happening in the hallway? And then we actually put what the remedy was or consequence, or if the student's going to be having some type of remedy that's happening for them. And then underneath, it gives us all the social emotional, so this is the survey that the students take. So we can say, all right, we could put in an intervention for, say, social awareness. Maybe that is something that's inhibiting that student. And even when you break it down, it will give us a playbook on how we could help that student with self-management, or how do we help them with social awareness, and it links us right to the playbook. So here's an example of the playbook. If I want, I can put anything in here. If I need help for a student that cannot do two-digit addition, it will give me 5 different strategies to do that. If I need help in how can I have a student participate more in class, I can put that up in this search bar. It will give me activities to help my students do better in class if I feel like I've run out of my strategies. So the playbook is amazing in this because there's something for everyone. And it's even helpful if a student is on an IEP. If you want more details on how to help with academics or behavior, you can have a variety of different things. So this is what we really were looking for. And again, there's way more features in this, but I wanted to give you an overview of how this has helped us take every piece of data point that we have, including attendance, grades, assessments, and put it into one place rather than logging into this, searching in, this, finding the piece of paper I wrote down with, information about Maria on it, and coming to a meeting and actually having a conversation around the student. So that is the academic side of it. And then, I'll take questions in a minute, but then on this side is the survey information. And we're just waiting for it to populate. Come on, Wi-Fi, you can do it. All right. So here, this gives us an idea of all the schools, and the district as a whole. And these are not the same schools, so I'm just going to pick any of them. And within that school, it will give you all the survey information, and then you can explore it even further to say, okay, we're seeing that maybe family support is something we should look at as a district. So this one only has the guardian one. We have 2 other tabs. We have a guardian tab or families surveys. We have a teacher survey tab, and then we have a student survey tab. So we can explore all of them. This demo account only has the family one in here, and it gives you an idea of how the results are changing over time based on the questions that were asked to families about this topic. So families' perception of the amount of academic and social support that they provide their child with outside of school, and it gives, the parents get to answer, we get the data back, we can decide, do we need to put something in place to help parents help their students outside of school? And it gives us all of that data, and then we can analyze it. And we have it for all 3 of our areas that we provide the surveys. It's a lot of information, so I don't want to keep going until people have questions. So I'm going to take a little stop right there.
I got a question.
Good.
I love it. If I was teaching, I'd be using that. I
Well,
love
you
this
know
kind
what
of
I'm
stuff.
talking about, the times that you're
love
like,
this.
I gotta go to a meeting, and you pulling 15 things, and then you're like, wait a minute, I have to make a decision
Just to
on a
kind of
child.
help you get the whole picture on a kid. I love it. But I do have 2 questions. One is on the academic piece. Obviously, things like iReady are going to be generated by iReady and put right in there. But how do grades, like say for an elementary grade, so much of the grading is what teachers have to grade kids on a day by day, week by week. How does that kind of academic information get into Panorama?
Yep, so it populates at 12 o'clock every night, it's midnight every night. Goes in, and it's going to pull anything that's sitting in Aspen and pull it out. It doesn't do the daily grading, because then what happened was in one of our iterations when we weren't using Panorama, everybody wanted all these pieces of data in there, and it just got messy, right? Like, we have to decide what do we actually want. So when it comes to that academic side, it's only going to pull the standards-based report cards.
Okay.
It's only going to pull the actual letter grades 5 through 12. So until a teacher actually puts something in, it will not populate. But if you're in the middle of a term right now, so this is the 5 through 12, because they post every 2 weeks, that term grade could change. right? You know, parents could see that on the portal, they could get an alert, that we can actually see the change. So once I put a grade in, if I put one in tonight, the system would pick it up at midnight, and that grade would show up, and that actual assignment would show up. So for 5 through 12, you're getting more information. For the K through 4, we'd only have to wait until we have the actual standards-based report.
Okay.
And then what we did is working with Panorama, we did the math behind it to be like, okay, if you have this many standards, then it could be in the green. If you have this many standards, this would be yellow. This many standards is red. Like, this is a student we'd be concerned about, because with the standards-based report cards, there's way more standards than just a singular grade.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
So all the pieces aren't there for the elementary, but there's a lot
Yeah,
there.
but all of, like, if I were to pull up, they don't have the standards in here. If I pull up our information, I see all the standards. I can tell you that you got, 15 out of 17 of the ELA standards. You got this many of and which ones they are, and then I can just dig down into them. Now, what this doesn't do is, so let's just say you looked at the iReady stuff, that's getting populated automatically from iReady. If I have to dig further into how the student scored on iReady, I'd still need to log into iReady. Like, it's not going to allow us to pull in that deep of information, but it's more of that overview in that red, yellow, green system, because when you start seeing yellow and red, you're like, what's going on? Like, we got to take a look at it. It at least alerts you.
Yeah, but I mean, iReady, you get a lot of great information, but I'm sure there must be students where there's a discrepancy, where iReady seems to say one thing in their classroom behavior, performance shows something else. So there's not a real way to measure that for the younger kids yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions around, like, if a student's getting all A's and B's, but their assessments are very, very low, what's going on? Or vice versa.
Or the other way,
right?
yeah.
Their grades are super low, and then their assessments are high. What's the disconnect, right? Like, why are we seeing this disconnect? And that's kind of what we were getting at with some of this, getting this information in one place. Because, I mean, I'm sure that's happened to any of us is in teaching. I'm sure that happens, I'd be like, oh, I didn't realize that was going on. Why are their assessments so low, but then they're still doing so well in class? Is there a difference? Is it, what is it?
Yeah.
But without seeing it, you don't know what's sometimes.
Right. But there's a lot there, so I think that's great.
And it's also when you're digging into looking at the students individually, if you're having a conference, you can pull that out, print it off, give it to the parents. And that's a nice feature to have instead of trying to put your own system together for parents.
So my other question was about the part where you could actually put in behavior incidents. And I know that, different teachers are different places in using this, but how's that been working out? I mean, because there are kids who, if you just tried to keep it in your head, they had trouble this day with this kid or that day with that kid, but how's that working with people inputting that kind of information?
So they're still putting it into Aspen, and it's getting pulled into Panorama. And all the schools have identified like major and minors, because there's a difference between a major incident and a minor incident. And when you get into the upper grades, there's a distinct difference between a major incident, that some things that need to be reported over to the state. So the schools got together, they've identified what's like major and what's minor. They put that information, we put it into Aspen. The teachers can actually go in and add the information in if they want to, similar to like the Swiss program, or if they used to use a Google form to do it. But that's been working out, because this allows us to see if it's a major or minor. It gives us two sides of it, so you can be like, oh, okay, this is just more of like.
Just blah, blah, blah.
Yes, blah, blah, blah. Somebody's just, being a nudge, opposed to, wow, we've got this problem. And then when they go into like a behavior report, and actually, let me see if they have any information in there. What I like about it is that it starts to tell you like how many majors, how many minors. No data means that they didn't identify either one of it. But then when we go into those incidences, we can see if like there's a trend. If something's happening all the time, this time of day, in a hallway, at lunch, at recess, and if there's a trend of like more fights, more, I don't know, I hate to say weapons, but like weapons. If there's something big coming up, you'll start to see like, what's this? What do we have to put something in place, and why is it happening? Where is it happening? What time of day is it happening? So it's working out well, right? We had other programs like Swiss, and that was another place that you had to go and get the information and try and figure out what's happening. It will
Just
actually.
had the
put it in
behavior
there.
stuff too, that didn't have the
Say it
academic.
again?
That just had the behavior, it didn't have the academics.
Right, that only had the behavior.
Different pieces, different
Right,
things,
so
different
it's
places.
literally like, think of a poster board, and you're trying to put all this stuff up and then trying to figure things out. It's actually sitting in here, so that has been working out pretty well.
I had two questions. One is around the flagging that you mentioned. Does that happen automatically based on what Panorama calculates, based on the data it receives? Does that happen because somebody's looking and saying, we need to do an intervention because of what we're seeing in Panorama? Or does that simply reflect students who are on 504s or IEPs or have some other special plan that modifies their instruction?
It's the second one. So we can put in intervention plans, we can put in academic or behavior one. We put the plan in, and then we can decide how to progress monitor it, so it has to actually be done. That's the second part of Panorama that we're gonna be exploring a little bit more next year. Some of the schools are a little bit more comfortable with it than other schools, and teachers have, because, they have all the features, so like myself included, as soon as I have features, I start clicking into them. So some people have automatically started to go through that and add the intervention plans, but we have to put a little bit more PD around, like, what does this look like and what do we actually want in there? And then who's monitoring it? Because a plan's all well and good, but if nobody's monitoring it, it's really not gonna help us. So those are actually put in by either a team, a teacher, and how it's gonna be monitored. Panorama doesn't pick it up by any type of data. And it's not just for students with 504s or IEPs, L students, any of the above. It can be for any student.
Other questions?
Yes. It's the fact that I'm an attorney. So let me just.
These are fake, this is fake information. I'm like,
No, well, but it's data, any kind of data. We're dealing with creating a record about someone. And an evolving record, and a record about a child who's growing up and, So question is, who can enter data? And what are your rules regarding access and privacy rules around this data? Because I can see if a parent is coming to a session and you're going to show this whole panorama thing to the parent and say, see, here's the problem. Okay, and now you're giving data from various teachers, various incidents, various things that happened that the person may not have had access to before, that type of thing. So I just don't, I don't know what your guidance, what your rules are, what your data policy is about the use of Panorama. I think that this is absolutely a fabulous type of tool. From seeing this, and if I was a classroom teacher and I've got this down, okay, it's one more way of verifying for myself what I'm seeing every day in what's happening with with my students. But I can also see at maybe a middle school and high school level where students have access to many teachers, guidance counselors, everybody throughout the system, who is going to be changing those data points and when can they, and so on. So I think it's going to be very important to have a really good policy in place for this.
So we do only provide student access to the people that are supposed to have the access. So if you're a principal, you have access to your whole school. You get to see everything. If you're a teacher, you only have access to your students. So there's no student information or confidentiality that's broken. And the people that are entering in the information are only the people so we have identified roles in here. So there's a teacher role, there's an admin role, and we identify who receives what roles. Only teachers that have actual students, like we have to make sure that everybody has a role, even in Aspen, which happens all the time. And then they get chosen for these specific roles, so they can only see those students that they're supposed to see. So nobody has, there's no, and even like the iReady and all of that, parents, teachers all have access to that anyway. And we are allowed to give that to parents. And there's been times, like even if we've had a parent that's asked for their student record, we've given them a copy of this as well because it's just laid out better for them. It's no different than when they say, I'd like a copy of my students' grades, their transcript. I want a copy of how they're doing on their assessments, their state testing. It's all of the information that they're allowed to have on their own student. So all the roles are defined, and only people receive the role that they are designated to have. So like a teacher can't see all the students, they can only see the students they have, whether that's at
Okay.
middle school or high school.
But let's say a dean at the high school can access every student
Yes, they can,
in the school.
in the school, as they
The
should.
entire
The
set of
teachers don't get to see the detailed part of some of those consequences, right? Suspensions and all of that. They only see that there was an incident. They don't get to drop down, but the actual dean would be able to go in and see, like, if there's a
I think we're in policies.
Well, yeah, you have a policy on this, it's your student information policy. so
Yeah.
This falls within it, and then even Panorama having the information, we've signed an agreement, they're in a secure account. So
Okay.
and teachers can't even go back, so if next year, when we roll the students over, they can't go back and see students they don't have anymore, they're gonna only see the students that they currently have.
Okay. And so teachers cannot share the records of their classes with other teachers? Okay.
That would happen with or without Panorama, that is.
Right,
the
grade
student
books, all that
that's
stuff,
the
same
student
thing,
information
yeah.
That is
regulation with the
extremely
state.
important.
Is it shareable in aggregate at some end size, or is it not shareable at all? Like, is there any way to see, like, for example, to do a data dive as a staff, looking, in aggregate at the student body and how they've grown over time?
For that information, like without the student, identifying who the students are, I think of something like MCAS, right? Like, we'll just say this is how overall all seventh graders performed, right? That wouldn't be a student information violation because the student names are not there.
Sure, but I didn't know if there was a certain end size. So for example, could you look at achievement gaps between groups of students?
Yes.
And at what end size is it allowed to look at a group of
I
students?
haven't looked that deep. I don't know if it limits that, similar to like MCAS, where if it's not 20 or more students, you can't see it. But I don't think anybody has gone that deep into it, but I can find out.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So there's a ton of other features in there, but
It's
just-
amazing.
It just kind of gives you the overview of how easy it is to click and get the information rather than searching for it. And providing information right out of the gate for even like a parent. I'd be like, here you go, I'd use this at a conference. That would, what I would do.
I think it's like anything else with data.
Oh, yeah.
There's always a human being behind the data, right? And so you just honestly have to really think about all of those issues.
Oh, yeah.
And, you don't want to ruin a kid, change the reputation of a child, whatever. So thank you, I appreciate that, and I think that's really important.
And I want to thank Linda. I'd have been fortunate enough to actually kind of get a preview of this earlier in the year. I'm thinking, wow, this is so great. I mean, how could we get this to the rest of the committee? How can other people? And it's been months kind of
Well,
working
because I had
out
to
how to
work with the
get it.
company, because this is their I was actually laughing with them. I said, I think we actually should get a check because I'm actually promoting your program. So do you think I'm gonna get a royalty check? How does this work? Because this is proprietary information. And I said, you've already sold it to us, so we have it. I just need a way to be able to show people because somebody might want to use it somewhere else. So we're only here to help you. So it just took a little while to get their demo site.
I wouldn't want to have it because it's get down a rabbit hole there. You could spend hours and hours and hours clicking and finding and.
Well, especially with all the demographics on the side
Yeah,
and by
I just
grade
see-
level, you can look
Oh.
by the counselor. I mean, it's everything we have. It's like, oh, let's go find
Right,
it.
it could be in there forever.
But just an overview,
Great.
it's okay, kids are not okay, how can we help?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It's
Yeah,
really
great.
helpful now to really see how it works, because you talk about it a lot. So
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is
next
the
up- Yep.
LGBTQ Pride Month is this month. And so we have a proclamation. I believe Susan's going to read it for us.
Okay, this is the Chelmsford Public Schools proclamation on lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus, heretofore known as LGBTQ plus. It is now Pride Month, June 2024. Whereas the Chelmsford Public Schools is a welcoming, learning community, and whereas the Chelmsford Public Schools recognizes the importance of equality and freedom, and whereas the nation was founded upon and is guided by a sense of principles that includes that every person has been created equal, that each has rights to their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and that each person shall be accorded the full recognition and protection of law. And whereas the Chelmsford Public Schools lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer plus, LGBTQ plus community are a vital part of all fields and professions and contribute to a stronger community. And whereas the Chelmsford Public Schools is dedicated to fostering acceptance of all its members and preventing discrimination and bullying based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And whereas the Chelmsford Public Schools is strengthened by and thrives upon the rich diversity of ethnic, cultural, racial, gender, and sexual identities of its residents, all of which contribute to the vibrant character of our system. And whereas the Center for Disease Control, CDC, recognizes that LGBTQ plus teens are at a higher risk to be the victims of violence and have increased suicide rates. And whereas it is imperative that young people in the district, regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity, feel valued, safe, empowered, and supported by their peers, educators, and school leaders. Now, therefore, we, the Chelmsford School Committee, and on behalf of the Chelmsford Public Schools, hereby proclaim and recognize June 2024 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, Queer plus, LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the Chelmsford Public Schools, and urge all members to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ plus community and to actively promote the principles of equality and liberty. Signed this day, fourth day of June, 2024.
And then we'll take an official vote on that.
All right,
The motion?
I move that we proclaim, as a committee, we proclaim and recognize June 2024 as Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender, and Queer plus LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the Chelmsford Public Schools.
Second that motion?
Who seconded it?
Diana.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much for doing it, Susan. I gotta put it off at Susan, so I didn't have to read the whole thing, but
So you have to
you did a great job.
physically sign it.
Yeah, we're gonna sign
I
it.
have an original, so I'll pass it around after the meeting, and we can all sign it.
Great,
Thank you.
all right. All right.
Super. Number 6, I'm actually going to ask Joanna. We just had a couple of more smaller one-time budget expenditures. I'm just going to ask Joanna to walk you through that, give you a little update, and then there's an accompanying transfer.
Thank you. In previous reports, the financial reports, the quarterly reports, the budget projections, we are favorable this year of our $70,700,000 budget. You've already approved at 2 prior meetings some one-time purchases. The first was about $1.6 million, and the second one at the last meeting in May was $556,000. This is a third request totaling $63,550, and they're related to 2 projects you've already seen. One is the art rooms, and one is the new little science project area at the high school. So the art rooms, it's installing the lighting and the power upgrades for the light. Remember, this is a pretty big area. It's 5 rooms. And then some dumpsters to get rid of the debris. And then the second one is the little science project area. There is going to need to be some abatement, and that quote hasn't actually come in yet. This is an estimate. We didn't want to wait too much longer in June because we wanted to get it to the committee, and then the oversight of the abatement. So any questions on the one-time purchases?
Anybody have any questions? I noticed most of this is coming from substitutes line. Is that because we didn't need as many substitutes this year, or we couldn't get as many substitutes this year?
Specifically, it's in the day-to-day sub-line. You know, we have like 4 different sub-lines, and that one came in a little bit less. Some of them are right spot on, like the long-term subs, things like that.
Right. Other questions? Will this be our last request, or do you think we'll have another one at the last meeting?
Well, we've only got one more meeting to go.
I know, that's
so,
what I mean. That's all we have, I know.
But it'll be a small one if
Okay,
it comes in.
okay, yeah.
There were a couple, we really do try to do the biggest order early just because of the lead time. And there were a couple of these smaller projects that, just actually had more service-related components that are just all getting kind of hammered out as we're getting into the summer. So I'm not overly anticipating anything for the next meeting, but, going to reserve our right to have something small if it were to come forward.
And are we putting any money in that special ed reserve account this year or no?
Oh, yeah, so that we'll all talk about in July.
Okay.
When we actually do like the closing of the
Okay,
books.
okay.
So because we'll be liquidating purchase orders, making
Yeah.
final year-end payments. In July is usually when we reconcile everything, so we'll do the prepaid tuitions. We'll come forward with you, we'll probably have like a recommendation to pay for the turf fields
Yeah.
again so we'll have all of those, but that's like a July action.
Okay.
That wouldn't come until then.
But we've set aside $1.8 million for that so far.
You authorized up
Yes,
to $1.8 million.
Yeah.
Okay,
On that.
That gives us wiggle room as we're closing the books.
okay.
All right, I'll take a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the FY 2024 local operating budget transfers discussed totaling $63,550 for the Chelmsford Public Schools as presented.
Second.
Okay, any further questions? I will have to do roll call. Diana?
Aye.
Susan?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I had listed approval of field trips on the agenda. I thought we may have one that came in for like a year from now for an overseas, and it did not. So I don't have approval of field trips. So that would just bring you to the reports.
Okay, all right. Anyone have any liaison reports?
I attended a PTO meeting for McCarthy and Parker, my first time with that particular group. Some of what they shared, we already heard from our student members tonight. For example, 8th graders doing a visit to the high school, and the unified game day that happened today. But I think what was interesting is at the end of the meeting, I think there were a bunch of them that were very excited to just tell me their thoughts and ask some questions on some things. So I am just going to report out on what I heard them talking about and what they shared with me. There were the thing I heard the most was around hiring. There were a lot of questions and concerns about the candidate pipeline for teachers. One of them, who is a parent and a teacher, talked about what she perceives as difficulty in getting teachers to accept job offers in Chelmsford due to our pay rates. And that led to a lot of parents chiming in asking if we have a teacher referral program where there are incentives to teachers for referring other educators to join the district, or any other kinds of incentives to help kind of refer teachers into the district. There were also questions and concerns about the diversity of the teaching force and the challenges in trying to hire a more diverse staff that better represents the student population. So I just wanted to elevate that because I know it's something that is very present, particularly this time of year, as I know the district is wrapping up some of its sort of initial plans for hiring for the fall. Lastly, I'm just going to elevate for them that there is won't call it desperate, but a fervent request for 5th grade families or rising 5th grade families to join the Parker PTO in particular. And they invite families to come on at the June 10th meeting.
Great. Anyone else have liaison reports?
I do. I was at CHIPS PTO last night, and I'm pleased to report that they were able to elect a full slate of officers to continue their PTO. They not only have a full slate, they have 3 brand-new people who are kind of going to shadow in each of those roles so that they are pretty much guaranteed that the year after they will have officers as well. So they were really thrilled with that because we've been worried about participation in PTOs. Another thing that did come up was talking about how the fact that CHIPS does not have a music teacher come in at all, and we were kind of brainstorming some ideas of maybe having some high school kids sometimes come in and, some of the chorus groups or the instruments and having some possible visitation. So it's not necessarily a school committee thing to decide upon, but in the future, maybe talk about some of those ideas, because maybe there's some ways we could do it for free and bring them some music.
Great.
So,
I attended the Center PTO meeting. It's exceptionally well-attended as usual. Center School does have a full slate for next year as well. They did all of their elections, and they went over a report of the enrichment that they've done throughout the year, and I just want to commend them because they're not only great fundraisers, but they really spend the money on enrichment, which is where it's supposed to go, and they did a great job with that.
John, anything? Okay. I don't have any reports, but just a couple upcoming, so Alumni Association was supposed to meet tomorrow night, they could push that till next Tuesday, just because of conflicts. And then also on June 12th, there's a municipal open house at the library, starting at 6 o'clock, and so members of various committees are gonna be going there. I volunteered to represent the school committee. If anybody else would like to come and join me, that'd be great. But it's at 6 o'clock, and it's just, people want to get information about all the different committees and what's involved in the committees. Maybe we can recruit some people for, to get on committees in the future, that type of thing. So that's next Wednesday, the 12th, starting at 6 o'clock at the library. So just wanted to mention that. All right.
So I know that I had the high school this year, so I'll just mention that I was told that the after prom was a tremendous success once again this year. And the amount of donations and contributions by families of the students was absolutely amazing. I know that in person because I was a collection site, and it was just amazing to see.
It's great. Every year, it's just,
Incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
All right, anybody have any new items they would like? Was good, okay. All right, great. So we're now to our second public input part of our meeting. I believe we have some speakers, so if there's just a quick update, if there's anyone present that would like to address the committee, please come forward to the microphone. Please state your name and address for those speaking tonight. Just try to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and keep in mind, we will not be responding directly to your comments during this part of the meeting, although we may address them at a future meeting. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda DeSimone. I reside at 10 Footpath Road. My husband, Tom, and I are here to address concerns that occurred before, during, and after, in our opinion, a bullying incident that took place on February 15th this year between our 8th grade daughter and her foreign language teacher. We've followed the recommended escalations process and are here to support and partner with you to resolve the concerns we have identified. They are communication. There was a genuine lack of communication between the principal and superintendent. Parents, including myself, were informed by the superintendent that he was unaware of incidents reported to the principal. Emails and voicemails went unanswered, requiring multiple follow-ups from parents. Lack of accountability. The overall lack of communication led to no accountability. For instance, the teacher involved in the incident made conflicting statements in January about their departure. When I raised this with the principal, he indicated an apology from the teacher would be made to the students, as the teacher indicated in error they were leaving. The apology never occurred. Lack of mental health support. Students did not receive timely responses from guidance counselors. During a March 6th coffee chat, a father shared with the superintendent that his 7th grade daughter's guidance counselor hadn't responded in 3 weeks of emails from him and his daughter. Our daughter's request on at least 2 occasions to see her guidance counselor were never followed up on. Our daughter gave up. I appreciate your time and attention to these concerns. Again, we both want to reiterate our interest in working on these concerns that we brought up today. And I'd like to just say, if there are any parents and students listening, I want to thank the students who supported our daughter and those who spoke out against bullying and the emotional abuse. Your courage and desire for change are commendable. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak tonight? All right, well, thank you very much for coming here tonight. All right, if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
I say.
Second, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. All right, thank you.
Everybody loves that.